So the next news article is Smart PDS. Uh, this scheme was launched by the center. The Smart PDS is a scheme for modernization and reforms through technology in public distribution system. We all know that in 2013, the center passed the National Food Security Act 2013. It provides subsidized food grains to people who are below poverty line. So the targeted public distribution system providing food grains every month to 81.3 crore beneficiaries, right? So this is very significant in terms of eradicating hunger, uh, reducing the levels of malnutrition, infant mortality rate, and maternal mortality rate. Because this scheme also cover the pregnant and lactating mothers. And also remember, this scheme, the adult female member of a household is considered as a owner of the family. So this in a way also leads to the woman empowerment. So in this article, the author has stressed on the technology within the public distribution system, the data driven decision making, and how it will be a game changer in the overall public distribution architecture, and how it will benefit a more number of people in terms of providing them with subsidized food grains. Okay. The problem with the public distribution system is lack of data on consumption and mobility patterns, right? So there is lack of data on consumption and mobility patterns, and this is rightly highlighted by the author here. Okay. And so when you have a data on consumption and mobility, it is easy for the policy makers to understand the existing lacunas and shortcomings in the public distribution system, so that the delivery would be more efficient and effective. So to ensure delivery of critical central welfare schemes to the most vulnerable sections of the society. Okay. So and the smart PDS, it is together called as smart PDS initiative. So this smart PDS initiative will implement the data driven decision making, right? So and the deficit which is existing in the data driven decision making. Now the center plans to use data and analytic platforms like information and communication technology tools to deepen public distribution sector reforms, right? Because in hunger index also, global hunger index also, India is performing poorly compared to the neighboring countries, even though India has been providing public distribution, I mean, providing food grains at a very subsidized price, and the penetration of the public distribution system into rural areas is so deep, right? So nearly 93% of total monthly allocated food grains are distributed through Aadhaar authenticated mode, right? Aadhaar authentication mode through the point of sale missions, electronic point of sale missions. So the Aadhaar authentication for the distribution of food grains is made mandatory to ensure that the corruption, leakages, and the deduplication of the ration cards, right? So this ensures that the public exchequer would be saved, and beneficiaries of the program, the right beneficiaries of the program would get the benefits, and it also ensures that the ghost beneficiaries would be excluded from the scheme, from the ambit of the public distribution system, and it also ensures that the exclusion errors are minimized. Okay. So in this backdrop, also understand the integrated management of public distribution system. So as part of the integrated management of public distribution system, the center started one nation, one ration card scheme. This is a nationwide portability of the public distribution system started by the center. So so this scheme will also help nation level data repository for deduplication of beneficiaries. Okay. For example, there are ghost beneficiaries. They are deriving benefits from the public distribution system, depriving the government benefits to the actual beneficiaries. So this has been rightly emphasized, and an integrated data infrastructure systems. Across the ration card management will help to further strengthen the existing public distribution system architecture, right? Now, one nation, one ration card scheme has been implemented across 36 states and union territories. So consistently recording over 3.5 crore monthly portable transactions. So this benefits the one nation card scheme benefit the migrant laborers, especially the construction workers. If they go to another state, they can get the benefits of the public distribution system. So the nationwide portability. Okay, right. So the data which has been generated by the integrated management of public distribution system and smart public distribution system will also have a spin-off effects on other government schemes and policies. For example, like e-shram portal. So e-shram portal is to identify the unorganized sector workers, right? So a complete data over the unorganized sector workers, so that the benefits of social security will be extended to the unorganized sector workers. So the Ayushman Bharat program, the health insurance program, the street vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi, Swanidhi program, financial assistance to street vendors. It was announced during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the other number also. So all these schemes have a ready data through the smart PDS system, and it will have a spin-off effect and a multiplier effect over the other schemes as well. So you can see ICDS centers and PM Poshan. So these are envisioned to reduce the levels of malnutrition among the children, reduce the under 5 mortality rate and maternal mortality rates, vaccination. So all these programs and schemes will be benefited by the smart PDS. So the scope of smart PDS is clearly beyond the ration distribution. So it is not just about the ration distribution, but it is about generating huge amounts of data, and that gives a fillip to data-driven decision making, and that will also have a spin-off effects on other government schemes. Okay, so in this backdrop, so let's look into the public distribution system, some of the issues in public distribution system, steps taken so far, and what more is can be done, right? So if you look at the issues, the poor quality, for example, commodities supplied are generally rather poor quality, and lack of storage capacity. For example, see, every year the Food Corporation of India procure food grains from the farmers, right? Providing them MSP, and the food grains are stored in buffer stocks. So there is a lack of storage facility or the poor storage facility. Further degrading the quality of the food grain is a major challenge, right? Identification of beneficiary is also a challenge, because the responsibility of identifying beneficiary is rests on the state government. There's a problem of ghost cards in the ration in the public distribution system. So the deduplication process should be undertaken, and rising food subsidy is also a problem. I mean, the food subsidy, the fertilizer subsidy, the power subsidy, the fuel subsidy are a major burden on the exchequer of the government. So this is also a concern, and leakage of food grains during the distribution process, the leakages, corruption, and diversion of food grains is a major problem, right? So you just remember all these issues. And what are the steps taken to minimize these issues? So construction of cordons and silos to ensure that the storage capacity is further enhanced, are the seeding of public distribution systems. So this ensures that the existing ration cards are deduplicated and the ghost beneficiaries are eliminated. And digital cashless and less cash payments, since the ration cards are linked with the Aadhaar card, digital payments, cashless payments got a further boost. So automation of fair price shops. Now most of the fair price shops are using the point of sale machines, right? So they're using point of sale machines. They are using digital payments, and they are also using the Aadhaar card linked devices. So digitization of ration cards. So now people not carrying the physical Aadhaar cards. The ration cards are also digitized. So the chances of tampering Aadhaar ration card is also very less. Now integrated management of public distribution system. So right. So this is a step to further revamp the public distribution system started by the government. So what more can be done in this regard to further strengthen the public distribution system, right? So the National Food Security Act 2013 so includes cash transfer and food coupons as a possible alternative machines. So the possibility of directly sending the benefits into the bank accounts of beneficiaries rather than providing food grains is also has been mooted, right? So advantages of this idea is expanded choice of beneficiaries, because if you credit money into the beneficiary's bank accounts, the choice would be further expanded. Competitive pricing among the grocery shops, because the demand would increase. and the pricing of commodities would also be further competitive. So reduced administrative costs because there's no distribution, transportation, and so other administrative costs involved if you directly credit money into the beneficiaries' bank accounts, right? So expanded choice of beneficiaries, competitive pricing among grocery stores, reduced administrative costs, and also the Supreme Court appointed a Wadhwa committee. Please remember this committee, Wadhwa committee. So use of technology can help tremendously streamlining the public distribution system. We already seen the benefits of adopting technology, transforming to technology in the public distribution system. It will further strengthen the targeted public distribution system and plug leakages during the food grain distribution under targeted distribution. So the committee also observed that end-to-end computerization to curb large-scale diversion and help delivery of food grains from state depots to beneficiaries. So large-scale computerization and digitization is also suggested by Wadhwa committee. So whenever you write a mains answer on food public distribution system, you can quote Wadhwa committee at the in the conclusion, right, in the way forward. One nation, one ration card scheme. Ration card Aadhaar linkages must be access the portability of the scheme. So we already discussed about the one nation and one ration card scheme. So beneficiaries can buy subsidized food grains from ration shops in any part of the country. So they can buy subsidized food grains in any part of the country. So these are the states which have already adopted the nationwide portability, part of the nationwide portability, and migrant laborers will benefit from this scheme because they can get food grains in every state. So the destination state also. So so even if a beneficiary moves to a state where food grains are given for free, she will not be able to access those benefits. Okay, so these are the benefits of the one nation and one ration card scheme, and the overall issues and what can be done to further improve the public distribution system. In the examination point of view, this scheme. Hello, aspirants. Today we will look into some of the most important articles given in the Hindu newspaper and the Indian Express newspaper also. So the first news article is Supreme Court slams silence of state on vicious circle of hate against minorities. So this is the first news article, and the center pushes back and also asks the court why it did not take suo cognizance of a video clip of Kerala child. So Justice Joseph stresses the need to separate religion and politics and adds that hate speech strikes a mortal blow to dignity. So before going into this article, let's just understand the definition of a hate crime. Okay. So Supreme Court in Pravas Supreme Court in Pravasi Balai Sangathan versus Union of India judgment. So defined hate speech. Okay. So Supreme Court outlined its definition and hate speech as an effort to marginalize individuals based on their membership in a group which seeks to delegitimize group members. Okay. So in the eyes of a majority, reducing their social standing and acceptance within the society. So hate speech makes a community marginalized in the eyes of a majority, right, within a society. So this is the definition given by the Supreme Court in this case. Now let's come to this article. So, in this article, the Supreme Court have taken note of the increasing hate crime in India and asked the center to take measures to prevent hate crime, which has been spreading rapidly within the society among different sections of the society. So, in this article, the Supreme Court has been emphasized on separation of religion and politics in opposition to what Mahatma Gandhi's views on religion and politics. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi warned that religion and politics should not be separated with each other, right? But on the other hand, the Supreme Court stresses on the separation of politics and religion. The reason is the reason is politicians and the political parties using hate speech to mobilize voters, right? So political parties have been using hate speech to mobilize voters, right? To inciting the majority over the minority. And in a functional democracy and in a healthy society, this should be prevented, right? And in fact, uh, the Solicitor General replied to the Supreme Court that hate crime is nothing to do with the politics, uh, but in fact. He also quoted that why Supreme Court did not take this suo motu cognizance of video uh, from Kerala, where a girl uh, made to threaten Hindus and Christians. So this also symbolizes that there has been a cultivation of hate in the minds of people, right? So uh, you can see here. So the country was caught in the vicious circle of hate, and the solution lay in expunging religion from politics. So the moment religion is separated from politics, all this will stop. So separation of religion and politics. So hate speech have made cracks in the idea of fraternity. So fraternity is living in harmony with a brotherhood, but hate speech made that cracks in the idea of fraternity. Right? I mean, it creates a social disharmony, tensions, violence in the society, and for any healthy society, this should be unacceptable because it increases the levels of intolerance within the society, right? Uh, so the freedom, in fact, Article 19 of Indian Constitution guarantees everyone freedom of speech and expression, but Article 19, Clause 2, provided for some restraints. Okay, so it is subjected to defamation and also hate speech. Okay, now Supreme Court stresses on the freedom of speech if there is intellectual deprivation. So and it stresses on the intellectual deprivation. I mean, there is intolerance, lack of education, lack of knowledge, and this symbolizes the intellectual deprivation. When there is an intellectual deprivation, you cannot expect India to become a superpower in the coming days. So that there is an urgent need to work on increasing the levels of tolerance in the society, educating individuals, imparting knowledge about living in harmony between different communities. That is very important for any democracy and protecting our constitutional values as well. So, uh, so this has been emphasized by one of the judges in this case. So the pledge to restrain ourselves from saying these things. Okay, so we should refrain ourselves saying these things which further incite the hatred among the communities. Before see, you can also see here. Before we dreamed of becoming a superpower, we should first follow the rule of law. The court said hate speech strikes a mortal blow to dignity. Dignity of every human being is very important in a democracy. So therefore, the government and the people should uphold the rule of law. So our objective was to be a country, and that will follow the rule of law. Okay, so rule of law should be followed, and we should never go down to that level of hate. So rule of law has been emphasized under Article 14, right to equality and equal protection of laws, and the Supreme Court's uh, concern regarding hate view um, has been expressed uh, uh, through this article. So let's look at some constitutional provisions and also the consequences of hate crime. Okay, right. So, for example, if you can see here, reasonable restrictions for free speech. Okay, so free speech guaranteed under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, freedom of speech and expression. So Article 19 1A of the Indian Constitution guarantees freedom of speech and expression. So Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution and Section 153A of Indian Penal Code and Section 123 3A of the Representation of People Act. So these are limitations on free speech. Okay, they impose limitations on free speech. Earlier, we also uh, uh, understood Representation of People Act and disqualification of members if they found guilty of hate speech, inciting violence, or hatred among the communities. Okay, so United Nations strategy and action plan on hate speech is also used as a guide among different countries to prevent the hate speech. And the committee was constituted for reforms in criminal laws, so to define hate speech and also provide for penal provisions to curb the hate speech. So those committees are Committee for Reforms in Criminal Laws, set up by Ministry of Home Affairs, and Committee to suggest reforms in criminal laws and sought suggestions from state governments, courts, and bar councils on hate speech, so that the state could take proactive measures to curb hate speech within the society, and that lays a strong foundations for a healthy society. Uh, Okay, so let's look at some of the reasons for the hate speech. One is intolerance in the society, ideological polarization, politicization of hate speech, and illiteracy. So there are some of the reasons for hate speech, right? For example, political parties have been using religion, caste, sex, everything to mobilize voters, and this also amounts to hate speech. And people with different ideologies have also been polarizing and creating divisions within the society. Kind of an intolerance also leads to the uh, increasing hate crime. Okay, illiteracy is also one such reason. So, what are the consequences of hate speech? So, it undermines social equality, and this leads to marginalization, oppression, and discrimination of different communities. And it is enacted to cause physical and psychological harm to individuals. So, it incites violence, and it provoke individuals, society to commit acts of terrorism, genocide, ethnicity, and ethnic cleansing. Uh, there are incidents of religious persecution of minorities in our neighboring states like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan. So that indicates a society which is intolerant, right? And that leads to instability within the society, and it is a tool to panic through rumor mongering against targeted people, right? For example, northeast exodus. Not just this, recently in Tamil Nadu, migrant laborers from Bihar, UP, there was a rumor, I mean uh, uh, they should leave Tamil Nadu immediately, otherwise they would be beaten up and killed also. So this will be used as a this would be used as a rumor mongering tool, right? Against the targeted people, the Northeast exodus. So this is all about the hate speech, and for the examination point of view, hate speech is very important. Okay. Okay, right. So the next news article is how West is hijacking G20. We all know that India has been hosting this year G20 summit, right? So India now it is under India's presidency. This year G20 meeting will be held. So right. So Denis Elipov, he is Russia's ambassador to India, right? So uh, he in this article he is saying that how West has been controlling the G20 agenda, and how the West is making only Ukraine only the agenda in the G20 summit, so thereby undermining all other relevant global issues, right? So this has been clearly stressed by the author, right? So he's saying that the world structure is transforming. It is becoming more multipolar, right? So there are multiple poles, not just a bipolar world where only two powers control the entire, only two powers are, or two countries are more powerful. Like we have seen this in during the Cold War times, where USSR and US confront with each other. Now he says that the world has becoming more multipolar, and there has been an equal distribution of power as well, right? So the voice of developing countries influence global process is also becoming very louder. You know? So now it is resulting in an independent decision making of those actors, those different actors, and India also follows the strategy of strategic autonomy. The follows the policy of strategic autonomy. Okay, right. So he is saying that now West has been advocating the rules based order, because the rules based order suits to the the Western interests rather than UN Charter or the international law. So rules-based order is more like following the rule of law and the set of standards which naturally the Western concept. It is believed that it is a Western concept and benefits the West. And so the West is unable to accept the main principle of UN Charter, that is sovereignty and territorial integrity. He is saying that, in fact, it is the responsibility of any sovereign nation to protect its territorial integrity and sovereignty. When Ukraine is used as a proxy against Russia, uh, then it is the right of Russia to confront. Okay. Um, so he also emphasizing on that. Hence, for example, West has been imposing unilateral sanctions, right? So the West has been imposing unilateral sanctions on Russia immediately after Russia attacked uh, Ukraine. And unfair competition and double standards attempts to put pressure on national governments, right? For example, West has been trying to get the support of all countries against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Okay. And so this war has impacted the global food and energy supplies, imposing unilateral sanctions, right? So the West has been imposing unilateral sanctions on Russia immediately after Russia attacked uh, Ukraine. And unfair competition and double standards attempts to put pressure on national governments, right? For example, West has been trying to get the support of all countries against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Okay. And so this war has impacted the global food and energy supply of oil and natural gas, right, to the Europe. So once Russia attacked Ukraine, the Western powers, the European Union, have imposed limits on import of Russian crude oil and natural gas. So this has increased the pressure on global oil markets. And remember, Russia also known as uh, the wheat bowl along with Ukraine. So they import wheat and they import wheat to the rest of the world. So therefore, it put a pressure on global energy and food markets, and this would have a very negative impact. This put a very negative impact on the rest of the world, right? So it says that the G20 represents the legitimate interests of all parties. So the forum, which accounts for around 80% of the GDP and international trade and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as two-thirds of world population. So G20 have the capability and the capacity to deal with these problems, like the issues like food crisis, energy crisis, increasing inflation, right? So he also emphasized on the theme of G20. For example, India's theme is One Earth, One Family, and One Future. So this is India's theme in this year's G20. So India's presidency with this theme can restore confidence in the multipolar, multilateral diplomacy, and it further fragments the world economy. So this it is imperative to recover the economic growth, right? So he's emphasizing on because see after the world has been plunged with the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, um, and followed by Russia-Ukraine conflict. So this has put a serious stress on the food, oil markets, and supply chains as well, because imposing sanctions on a one country would further lead to the trade a free supply of raw material. Okay. Now he also emphasized on of our foreign minister S. Jaishankar's statement, that is, um, uh, world's problems are not Europe's problems, but Europe's problems are world problems. Right. So Europe has created such a narrative to influence the rest of the world. Okay. And um, uh, he's also saying that the West together has been hijacking the agenda of the G20 summit. Ukraine is not the issue to discuss. There are several political, social, and economic issues, environmental issues to discuss, which are creating which are making the world to more destable. So those issues should be discussed rather than Russia-Ukraine war in order to make G20 more successful, right? And um, so he also saying that Russia welcome discussion on Ukraine in United Nations Security Council, but not the G20 because the it completely hijack the agenda. There are issues like terrorism, drug trafficking, crime, natural disasters, and many developing countries have been facing the impacts of uh, such issues. So therefore, they should be given primacy and they should be discussed in the G20 summit so that consensus-based decision making on these pressing issues would be possible. So right, and the policy followed by US and West together with European Union only serving the interests of few countries because the West is already economically developed and their supply chains are more or less protected, but it has been impacting the poor and underdeveloped countries. So they already made socio-economic development and uh, the developmental gains have also been rolling back of these developmental aspects. So this has been highlighted, and he also emphasized on India-Russia relationship, right? So India supports G20 presidency, and India's proactive leadership in taking forward the agenda of the G20 away from the Russia-Ukraine war, right? So in fact, the West has been using economic relations as a weapon in the hands of West, so against Russia, right? So this led to the imbalances in the international food market. Already, this is already discussed how imposing sanctions and restrictions on Russia lead to the stress on the food market. For example, if food and fuel prices are increasing, then it limits the capacity of developing countries who are dependent on fuel and food, um, right? And it further increases inflation and further aggravate the situation of poverty. In fact, this also leads to this also impact the sustainable development goals, where the eradication of hunger, poverty are main goals, right? So Russia is committed to working closely with the Indian presidency and participating actively in all G20 meetings conducted by India, right? So he's saying that the aim is to work together with India in a result-oriented manner and ready to show the maximum possible flexibility, right? So, and he also emphasized on the global south. So global south is countries um, uh, uh, below, the countries in the south. For example, South Asia, Africa, South America, together they are called as the global south. So they are poor and they are less developed industrially, economically. Their per capita incomes are also very low. But now the impacts of Russia-Ukraine war and Western countries hijacking the agenda of this G20 meeting would further impact the global south. Okay, so in this backdrop, let's look at G20 members, right? So G20 member countries, G7, all the G7 members are part of G20. Okay, so these are G7 members. Earlier, the grouping was known as G8, where Russia was also part of the G8. But after the annexation of Crimea into 2014 by Russia, it was expelled from G8. Now it becomes G7, and other countries include the G20. So India is also part of G20, and the European Union is also a member of G20, right? So in last year, February, Russia attacked uh, Ukraine. Okay, so these are the regions, Luhansk and Donetsk region. So they are part of Ukraine and now controlled by Russian forces. Okay, so they are now controlled by the Russian forces. It is now in eastern Ukraine, and Crimea. It was annexed by Russia in 2014. This is HOC and Black Sea. Okay, so Ukraine. So this is about the G20 meeting and how the meeting has been hijacked by the West, and what is the conflict and what are the impacts on the rest of the world. Okay. Okay, the next news article is Doval to SEO members seek no unilateral military superiority. Yesterday we have discussed India is holding a national security advisors meeting of all the Shanghai Cooperation Organization member states. So yesterday this meeting was organized. Uh, China and Pakistan were participated to video conferencing, right? So, and in this meeting, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval emphasized on sovereignty and territorial integrity of uh, member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, no unilateral military superiority in adjacent areas. So this he has been emphasized on. This is in the backdrop of China developing the dual use infrastructure at the border areas and confrontation, aggression of China over the line of actual control with India. So this is in the context of China's unilateral military position, military superiority. In fact, the SCO NSA meeting, uh, India has also highlighted the violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of member states because the China funded uh, China Pakistan economic corridor is passing through India's territory, that is Gilgit Baltistan, so part of Ladakh now. Uh, uh, and it has been violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity, and China has not paid heed to the India's concerns. So therefore, the NSA meeting has also discussed and raised this issue. You can see India was ready to cooperate on investing and building connectivity in the region, but cautioned that it was important to ensure that such initiatives are consultative, transparent, and participatory. So, for example, the connectivity, the intra-Shanghai Cooperation Organization member connectivity is very important for the trade, investment, supply chain resilience. But India has been stressed on the process of that should be consultative, transparent, and participatory as well. So discussed Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative and in fact the debt trap diplomacy in the case of Sri Lanka and Maldives because China has acquiring the assets, the strategic assets in these countries because of, by giving them a debt. So India's approach in this area is in sync with the SEO charter. So every organization have its own charter and charter underlines the principles of an organization. So uh, and this policy is to ensure comprehensive and balanced economic growth for integration into the global economy and improvement in transit capabilities, right? And major areas focused on this meeting are the regional security issues, the fight against terrorism, religious extremism, and ethnic separatism were focused on this meeting. And other area which has been emphasized on is the terrorism. So India is concerned with the terrorism and particularly the cross-border terrorism emanating from India's border, for example, like Pakistan. So they pose a serious threat to global peace and security. So all acts of terrorism, regardless of good terrorism, bad terrorism, should be considered as unjustifiable. So in this regard, UN Security Council have passed two resolutions, Resolution 1267 and Resolution 1373. So these resolutions should be implemented in letter and spirit to counter terrorism. So the other areas which have been discussed in this meeting are areas of international information security and biomedical security, cooperation in anti-drug trafficking, and official statement. You know, India is very near to both Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle, where these are two areas which produce the narcotics and drugs. So therefore, India is impacted by high or large scale drug trafficking. So these issues were also discussed extensively in this meeting. So in this backdrop, let's look into the countries which are part of G7, which are part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Sorry. So yesterday also we have discussed China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India, and Pakistan are uh, member state of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So total, India and Pakistan were part of Joint Shanghai Cooperation Organization together in 2017. These are observer states, these are dialogue partners, and guest attendants. Okay. Right. So, in this meeting, the National Security Advisor meeting, it is also discussed the confrontation at LAC between India and Pakistan. So, this is Akshay Chin region controlled by China since 1962. So, after 1962 war, this area is controlled by India. So, this is Galwan Valley where 20 of our soldiers were martyred in 2020. So you just remember these areas, Hot Spring and Pangang Lake. So this is the area. This red dotted line is LAC, right? Line of actual control. Uh, this is Gilgit-Baltistan, and China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is passing through this region. And this is Shaksgam Valley. This region is ceded to China by Pakistan, right? And Kashmir. Okay. So this is the area where regular confrontation between India and. So the next news article is the parliamentary panel recommended an apex body for the glacier management, right? So glaciers are accumulation of snow over a large periods of time. So they form through the accumulation of ice. So the committee has been saying that glaciers are a vital resource for the nation and they have a strategic importance. But due to climate change and global warming, melting glaciers have been melting. So melting glaciers pose a range of challenges, problems. For example, increasing the sea surface temperatures and the levels of water on perennial rivers would also further reduce, and it poses a serious threat to drinking water and for irrigation as well. So it results in water crisis. So therefore, management of glaciers is very important, um, uh, especially in the Indian context, right? So the Parliamentary Standing Committee has recommended an apex body for the management of glaciers, right? So at the national scale. So why it is recommended to set up an apex body for the glacial management? It is because at present the the glacial management is largely fragmented, right? So a fragmented research and a fragmented studies. For example, if you can see, Geological Survey of India maintains an inventory over Geological Survey of India maintains an inventory over the glaciers, and the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change look after the climate change related issues, and Department of Science and Technology involved in research of the glaciers, and National Center for Polar and Ocean Research also involved in Himalayan cryosphere. Now there are different bodies, different institutions and ministries engaged in different set of actions, right? Setting up an FX body for glacial management would further improve the glacial research and protection of conservation of our glaciers, because this has been emphasized that they have a strategic role and importance, um, right? So a vital national resource as well. So therefore, new strategies for combating challenges posed by climate change and global warming for the glacial management are required, right? The role of planners, scientists, and academicians assumes a critical importance in devising, developing, and implementing a suitable measures for the protection of these glaciers. Okay. So the committee therefore recommended that they should be a single nodal agency, bringing synergies among various government departments and ministries. Right. For example, see, um, uh, uh, fragmentation of roles and responsibilities would make the policies less effective, right? So, but a single overarching body for the management of glaciers would further make them the policies, the research, the studies targeted at the glacial management would make them more effective and efficient. So, therefore, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has rightly emphasized on setting up an apex body. Okay, and the responsibility is earmarked to Department of Water Resources and River Development, Ganga Rejuvenation. So to play a lead role to take this matter to its logical conclusion. I mean, setting up an institution is the responsibility is given to the this department. Okay. I mean, setting up a committee would further make the glacial management to be more sustainable and environment friendly, keeping in mind the concerns of climate change and global warming. Because we have a national mission on protection of Himalayan ecosystem. Himalayas are key global biodiversity hotspots, and several rivers originating from Himalayas are main source of drinking water irrigation for majority of our population. So therefore, glacial management assumes significance, right? So the next news article is no evictions for Great Nicobar project. Okay, so Great Nicobar project. So before going into this article, let's look into the Great Nicobar project. And so Niti Aayog piloted the Great Nicobar project with the value of 72,000 crore rupees. Okay? 72,000 crore rupees. So the integrated project in the Great Nicobar. includes construction of mega port and airport complex, a township spread over kilometer, pristine forest, and solar gas based power plant. Okay, so this idea has been mooted by the Niti Aayog, and this is an integrated project in the Great Nicobar region. And this project is implemented by Andaman and Nicobar Island Integrated Development Corporation Limited. Right. So ecologists and researchers have been raising concerns about this project because this is an area where tribals live, pristine forests, fragile ecosystem, and deforestation, cutting down trees would have a significant environmental and ecological uh, consequences because this is a rich biodiversity area, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and this also leads to the displacement of tribal people. They are There are several tribal people who are categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So therefore, the project have several roadblocks, and even ecologists and environmentalists have also been raising concerns over the project. Here you can see the map of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So this is together called as the North Andaman, the Little Andaman, and Nicobar Islands. Okay, so Andaman and these are Nicobar Islands. So Indira Point for the south of the Nicobar Islands. Okay, so this is a port player. So just remember the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where their location. And you can see here, so the Great Nicobar project, um, a township, an airport, a container transshipment terminal, and a power plant will be built and constructed as part of the Great Nicobar project. Okay. So let's come back to the article. So the implementation of Great Nicobar project will lead to the displacement of tribal people because the project will also be implemented in the areas where tribal people are living. Remember, Andaman and Nicobar Islands is home to most primitive and particularly vulnerable tribal groups. They are Shompens, Andamans, Sentinelese, right? So these tribal groups displacement is certainly a concern. This program is implemented by Andaman and Nicobar Islands Development Corporation. And what are the major components of this program? They are included in this. Okay, and this is in total 7,114 kilometer of tribal reserve area will be utilized for the project in total. So this is the area where tribal people live, 7,114 square kilometers of area where tribal people are live. So the Union Tribal Ministry says that uh, they will not compromise with the displacement of tribals. For example, if it is a matter of displacement of tribals, then the project will not be implemented in tribal areas, and tribals will not be displaced from these areas because they are categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So they are most primitive tribal groups. There are some criteria to classify tribal groups as a particularly vulnerable tribal groups. For example, primitive agriculture technology, low levels of literacy, declining population, are some of the criteria to be categorized as a primitive tribal groups. And Shompens would be displaced if the project is implemented. Shompen is a tribe in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So they are categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups, right? So the interests of tribal population, uh, especially Shompen tribes, they are particularly vulnerable tribes, are not affected adversely. So strict implementation of the provisions of the protection of tribal aboriginal tribal. So these tribals are also known as aboriginals. Okay, so there are already regulations in place, strict implementation of protection of aboriginal tribals. Okay, so the displacement of tribals will not be allowed. Ecotourism will also be further strictly regulated because in these areas where fragile and rich biodiversity is present, ecotourism will also be strictly regulated so that no disturbance to local tribals and the wildlife population. So the Lieutenant Governor of Andaman and Nicobar Islands already constituted a committee to obtain views and consultations on the impact of the project on wildlife and tribals, especially displacement of tribals. So this is about the Great Andaman Nicobar project and how it will lead to the displacement of the Shompen tribes and what impacts it will have on environment and ecology. Okay, so this is all for today's discussion. Thank you.